Good day, I'm Mayor Gary Sulz, and with me today is Paul Simon, lead of our Planning and Development Services with the City of Revelstoke. Enforcement of the new short-term rental bylaw is set to begin September 1st. Paul and I will be discussing what this will look like, plus we'll also be providing listeners with a refresh on the most important aspects of the bylaw. Paul, can you explain the approach the city will be taking to enforce the new short-term bylaw as of September 1st?
Certainly. So the city is going to be taking a two-prong approach. We will be doing proactive as well as reactive enforcement with respect to short-term rentals. So the proactive enforcement will come in the form of using online software to track listings, cross-reference it with our business license data. If someone is found to be advertising without a valid business license, then they would be subject to further enforcement. The reactive approach will actually be complaint-based. So if someone has an issue, they can lodge a complaint and then staff would investigate to determine whether or not a short-term rental is operating. And council actually adopted a policy back in April of this year to help guide that and make sure that the process was transparent for the public. And with that policy comes two things. So we would be sending out a letter to people informing them that they are operating contrary to city bylaws and give them a specified deadline by which they need to be brought into compliance. If they do not come into compliance by that deadline, then the file would be passed to our bylaw enforcement group, and subsequent enforcement action, including things like issuing tickets, would ultimately be undertaken.
All right, great. Appreciate that. As a refresher for our audience, Paul, can you give us a brief definition of what a short-term rental is, and how will I know if I'm allowed to have a short-term rental?
Yes. So a short-term rental is the use of a dwelling unit to rent out for a temporary period, so less than 30 days. Okay. That's the key. And you'd be renting out a full dwelling unit. And how you know whether or not you're allowed to actually undertake a short-term rental is based on your zoning. So really, really important that people understand what their property is zoned, and if your zoning ultimately has the use short-term rental listed in the whole list of permitted uses there.
Okay.
Now, if it does have the use short-term rental listed, then the next question is, okay, what regulations do I need to abide by? So we encourage people to look not only at the specific requirements that are included in their zone. So if you're zoned R1, for instance, and you see short-term rentals as a listed use, are there any requirements in my zone? And that you also need to look at what we call the supplementary regulations of the zoning bylaw. So Part 5 also includes requirements for short-term rentals that they need to abide by. So you got to look at both those areas.
Okay, great, thank you. And so what are the different ways that a resident can report a vacation rental if they feel it's operating illegally?
So if they do feel that there is a unit that's being rented out on a legal basis, then the best avenue is to really lodge a complaint on See-Click-Fix.
Okay.
So See-Click-Fix, it's really important. That's the main area by which our bylaw enforcement group can actually go out and start investigating some of these incidents. It also allows us to track and respond back to the public on the status of the complaint. And really, really importantly, it allows us to compile stats for both council and the public so that we get an idea of how well we're doing and how much of an issue this actually is, whether or not more resources need to be dedicated to it. Now, that being said, we also understand that maybe not everyone is comfortable using See-Click-Fix, or maybe they don't have access to a computer. So you can phone into the city and you can lodge a complaint. You can write into the city, or you can come to the front counter and lodge a complaint. We do request that you do provide your information. We will keep it confidential, but it does help us for following up with the complaint.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good. So Paul, if someone wants to find out if they're eligible for a short-term rental license, who do they need to connect to with the city?
So please come in, have a chat with some staff at the Development Services counter. We're more than happy to have a chat about the requirements for short-term rental, go through your zone with you, determine whether or not you're eligible to operate a short-term rental. Development Services Group has also worked really hard to prepare a lot of information on our webpage. So you'll see when you go onto the Development Services webpage, on the tabs on the left side, click short-term rental. Everything you need to know about short-term rental is in there. There's a short-term rental fact sheet. We have an operator guidebook, as well as information to help you through the application process.
Oh, that's awesome. It's good to see that. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you joining me today. I'm glad we've been able to share this important information about short-term rentals and enforcement with our viewers, as well as remind people to contact the city regarding licensing eligibility. Thanks to our audience for tuning in today. Be sure to take a few minutes to watch our other videos on the city Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube YouTube. Yeah, links. Thank you. Appreciate it.